A 40-ton animal was nearly hunted to extinction. For 100 years it fought back so violently that sailors called it the devil fish. Then something happened that no scientist can fully explain. It stopped running. It started coming toward us. Today, in a remote lagoon on the edge of Mexico, mother whales swim directly to small wooden boats and push their newborn calves toward human hands. They wait. They watch. They choose this. No food, no reward, no explanation science can name. This is Baja California, a 1,000-mile strip of land that ends at the bottom of the world. And it is one of the last places on Earth where nature still does things that make no sense. Most people drive past it. Most people never know what they missed. This is the full story. Every journey has a starting point. This one begins at a wall. Not symbolic. Physical. Rusted steel pillars driven straight into the Pacific Ocean. The waves crash through the bars. The salt air eats the metal. The water flows through without asking anyone's permission. On one side is California. On the other, the peninsula begins. You understand something immediately standing there. The wall is a human idea. The ocean is not interested in human ideas. The birds don't slow down. The tide doesn't change its rhythm. A permanent structure trying to divide something that cannot be divided, failing quietly every single day. From the wall, the city explodes into view, one of the busiest land border crossings on the planet. Tens of thousands of people moving through every single day. Streets choked with cars. Vendors on every sidewalk. The air carrying exhaust and grilled meat and loud music all at once. Two cultures pressing against each other here, and instead of staying separate, blending into something new built right on the seam between them. This city is the engine that starts everything. Because south of here, the road empties. The buildings disappear. The hills turn brown. And Baja California reveals what it actually is. Drive an hour south and something happens that makes no sense the first time you see it. Brown-baked hills break open into rows of vibrant green grapevines. Hundreds of acres of them. Stretching across dusty valley floors framed by granite boulders and dry sage. No river, almost no rain. Temperatures that would destroy most agriculture. Yet this valley produces 90% of all the wine made in Mexico. To understand why, you have to go back millions of years. This entire valley was once the bottom of the ocean. When the tectonic plates shifted and the water retreated, it left behind a thick layer of ancient sea minerals buried deep in the ground. The soil looks unforgiving from the surface, but beneath it is a memory. The grapevines send their roots dozens of feet straight down through dry dirt until they reach that ancient seabed. That ancient salt, a biological record of a world that no longer exists. What comes up through those roots ends up in the glass. Wine experts tasting these bottles for the first time notice something they cannot place. A faint salinity. A mineral quality that lingers on the tongue unlike any other wine in the world. That flavor is not a winemaking technique. It is the taste of an ocean that disappeared millions of years ago. Over 150 wineries spread across this valley. The air during harvest smells like dry sage and fermenting fruit. People spend their entire lives tending this earth in a place that should, by every measure, be empty. The fact that it is not is the first miracle of Baja California. It will not be the last. Where the fish taco was born. The road finds the coast and a large harbor opens up. Huge container ships sit next to small wooden fishing boats that have been in the water for decades. Every morning, enormous tuna and bright red snapper come off those boats carried by men who have been doing this work since they were teenagers. A few blocks from the water, something began over 50 years ago that would eventually travel around the entire world. The fish taco. The process has not changed. Fresh white fish into thick batter, dropped into hot oil until golden, into a warm corn tortilla with shredded cabbage, cream sauce, and fresh lime. That is the whole thing. It was invented as fast, cheap food for fishermen working the docks. No plan, no ambition, no awareness it would become anything. Today, it appears on menus in some of the most expensive restaurants in the world. Chefs spend years trying to replicate something a fisherman's wife figured out on a street corner with a pot of oil. What makes it impossible to truly copy is the same thing that makes the wine impossible to replicate. It is connected to a specific place. Fish that was in the ocean that morning. Lime from nearby hills. A tortilla made the way it has always been made. The stands are still on every corner. People still eat standing on the sidewalk. That part has not changed either. The salt desert and the whale lagoon. Further south, the ground turns white, not a little white, blindingly, completely, impossibly white, stretching to the horizon like a snowfield that somehow survived in the desert. But this is not snow. This is salt, the largest salt production facility on Earth. Enormous, shallow ponds covering thousands of acres where seawater is pumped in and left to the sun. The heat evaporates the liquid over months and leaves a hard, white crust. Machines the size of buildings scrape it up. Millions of tons shipped around the world every year, powered entirely by the sun, which does all the actual work. Walking near these ponds is intense. The reflected light hits from every angle. The air is sharp with minerals. The wind never stops. Then the flat terrain leads to a lagoon that looks like nothing from the outside. Calm water, low scrubland, small wooden boats at a simple dock. Every winter, hundreds of gray whales arrive here after traveling 5,000 miles from Alaska. They come to give birth. In the 19th century, whalers followed them here and hunted them close to extinction. The whales fought back so viciously the hunters named them devilfish. Protections came in the 1970s. The population recovered, and then the whales started coming toward the boats, not swimming nearby, coming directly to them. A full-grown mother will swim alongside a small boat and use her massive head to gently push her newborn calf toward the people sitting on the edge. She holds her position. She waits for a human hand. The calf rises partway out of the water, looks at the faces, allows itself to be touched. The skin feels like smooth, wet rubber covered in hard barnacles. Sometimes the mother lifts her own enormous head from the water and looks directly at the people on the boat. Slowly, deliberately, like she is studying them. Scientists have studied this for decades. No biological explanation holds up. The whales receive nothing. They are not trained. Every season, new calves arrive who have never seen a human, and they approach the boats anyway. The leading theory is that the mothers teach their children, that somewhere in the generational memory of these animals a decision was made, that those boats are safe, that those hands are safe. A species that was nearly destroyed by human hands now chooses to seek those same hands out. It is the strangest thing in Baja California. Possibly the strangest thing on Earth. The impossible landscapes. The road climbs and the desert disappears without warning. 1 mile there is dust and dry shrubs. The next mile the air is sharp and cold and massive pine trees surround the road. The smell changes completely. Clean and cold and forested, the kind of air that makes you breathe deeper automatically. This high-altitude forest sits at nearly 10,000 feet, surrounded on all sides by thousands of square miles of hot desert. A cold island, an ecological accident. Because the air here is so thin, so dry, and so far from any city lights, astronomers built the National Observatory on these peaks. Scientists live up here permanently, spending their careers in the dark, looking outward. The road then descends into a valley that looks like a different planet entirely. Enormous, smooth granite boulders the size of houses are stacked across the landscape. Between them grow plants that look like they arrived from somewhere else. The bujum tree grows straight up like a white candle, then bends and spirals without logic, some curling back toward the ground, some twisting in full circles. They live for hundreds of years and can survive a decade without rain. The carden cactus stands beside them, the largest cactus species on Earth, some reaching 60 feet tall, some weighing as much as a loaded truck because of all the water stored inside. The silence in this valley is total. Life here moves at a speed you cannot observe. These plants grow so slowly that changes over a human lifetime are nearly invisible. But they are growing, finding the precise minimum required to continue. Deep in the mountain canyons nearby, the rock walls are covered in murals that have survived 7,000 years. Red and black paintings of deer and mountain lions and human figures standing over 10 feet tall, made from ground minerals and plant juice, still vivid. The desert air preserved them completely. These paintings are on vertical cliff faces in places with no obvious way up. When Spanish missionaries found them in the 1700s, they concluded that only giants could have made them. The actual makers were the Cochimi people, who built palmwood scaffolding to reach the high faces. The painting was ceremony. These canyons were temples. Today, you can only reach these sites by mule through rugged terrain. When you finally stand beneath a figure painted 7,000 years before you, the distance between then and now becomes very small. The oasis and the rays. After miles of brown hills, the horizon fills with green. Thousands of date palms so dense their fronds form a continuous canopy, fed by a spring that comes from deep underground that no one has ever fully mapped. It simply appears, fills a lake, creates a river, and has been doing so for hundreds of years. The air changes the moment you enter the grove. Temperature drops, humidity rises, wet earth replaces dust, birds fill the branches, running water sounds come from everywhere as it moves through stone channels built centuries ago. In the center of this green world stands a church built in 1786 from dark volcanic stone. Its thick black walls against the bright green palms is one of the more startling contrasts in Baja California. Remove the single underground spring and everything disappears within weeks. The palms, the gardens, the community, the church. 3 centuries of human presence resting entirely on one hidden source of water nobody can see. Out in the open bay further south, the water surface explodes. Thousands of mobula rays moving together just beneath the surface. Then one launches into the air. Then dozens. Then hundreds. A full-grown ray can fly 3 or 4 feet above the water with its fins spread wide before dropping flat with a sharp crack. When thousands do this simultaneously, the sound carries across the bay like continuous applause from a full stadium. Pop after pop, overlapping, for hours. Nobody is entirely sure why. Some say parasites, some say mating, some say communication. The most interesting theory is that it serves no survival function at all, that it is simply what they do when they are together. The idea that thousands of rays launch themselves into the air repeatedly, simply because that is what you do when you are with your kind. The giants and the reef. In the winter months, the deep waters off the old colonial coast hold the largest animal to ever exist on this planet. The blue whale, larger than any dinosaur, up to 100 feet long, up to 150 tons, a heart the size of a car, a tongue that weighs as much as an elephant. The first sign is a column of water vapor shooting 30 feet into the air. A breath. Then the back emerges from the surface and keeps emerging, gray and enormous, going on far longer than seems possible for something alive. A small dorsal fin appears, almost absurd in scale against the rest of the animal. Then the tail rises completely out of the water and slides back beneath the surface without a single splash. Silently, with a grace completely inconsistent with its size. Nothing prepares you for being next to a living creature at this scale. The categories you use to understand the world stop applying. In the calm bay of the capital city further along the coast, whale sharks move through the shallows. The largest fish in the ocean, some 40 feet long, several tons. They move in slow loops with their wide mouths open, filtering plankton, completely indifferent to boats and swimmers. Their skin is dark with a precise pattern of white spots and lines. Floating at the surface looking down at the back of a whale shark through clear water, the pattern looks exactly like a photograph of deep space. A field of stars against darkness, shifting slowly in the current. No two sharks have the same pattern. Researchers use this to identify individuals across years and decades. At a small village near the southern tip, a coral reef tells a different kind of story. 30 years ago, this water was nearly empty. Local families had fished it with increasing efficiency until almost nothing remained. In 1995, they made a decision that went against every immediate economic interest. They stopped fishing entirely. No nets, no lines, no exceptions. The total mass of fish in the water increased by 460% over the next 2 decades. Massive schools of jackfish now gather in columns so dense they block the sunlight. Swimming beneath one is like looking up through a living ceiling. Thousands of silver bodies moving as one organism. The fish brought back the predators. Scalloped hammerhead sharks patrol the reef edges. Their wide, flat heads are covered in sensors that detect the electrical fields generated by the muscles of other animals. A ray buried completely under sand, invisible, still produces a signal the hammerhead can read. It swings its head from side to side like a detector sweeping a field. The reef that was dead is now one of the most alive places in the ocean, because a group of fishing families decided to stop. That is all it took. The peninsula narrows to almost nothing. The Pacific on one side, the Sea of Cortez on the other. They push toward each other until there is barely any land left between them. At the very tip, a point of rock extends into the water and the two seas meet. The Pacific arrives with energy built across thousands of miles of open ocean. The Sea of Cortez comes from the other direction, calmer but persistent. Where they meet, the water churns and swirls in ways that look confused. Two massive bodies of water that have never agreed on direction, suddenly forced into the same space. The same tectonic forces that built this peninsula converge here. Baja was torn away from mainland Mexico by forces still pulling it northward today, millimeters per year. The jagged rocks and stone pillars rising from the surf at this tip are the visible remains of that original fracture. El Arco stands in the water at the very end. A natural stone arch, once solid rock. The waves from 2 oceans found the weakest seams in the granite and worked on them for thousands of years, carving caves, cutting tunnels, widening gaps, until the openings met and an arch was left standing in the surf. The sea carved the exit out of the land itself, 1,000 miles, from a rusted wall standing in the surf to a stone arch standing in the same surf at the other end. In between, a valley that grows wine from the memory of a vanished ocean. A lagoon where a nearly extinct species chose to forgive us. A cold forest surrounded by desert on every side. Paintings made 7,000 years ago in places no one should have been able to reach. A reef that died and decided to come back. And a 40-ton animal that history gave every reason to hate us, lifting its head from the water to look us in the eye. Baja California does not advertise itself. The people who find it stay longer than they planned. The ones who leave think about it for years. They always use the same words without knowing it. They say it felt like the edge of something, like standing at the end of the world and finding out the world is much larger than you thought. This is Baja California, and almost nobody talks about it.